Hey, I'm Ethan Springston here with my co-host Kevin Guillen. This is the Keep Up Show, and I'm really excited today to talk about a product that is the foundation of Wilderness Athlete, and I would say the foundation of the outdoor performance nutrition industry, and that is Hydrate and Recover.
Yeah. Well, there's no mystery. Like Hydrate and Recover. Well, just back up. Like electrolytes in general, hydration drinks in general are kind of a dime a dozen these days. Like open Instagram, open Facebook, you're probably gonna get an ad from some electrolyte company, some sports drink company that's gonna promise you everything under the sun about how salt and X, Y, and Z are gonna save your life. Um, when actually though, we began this journey into the whole nutrition space for outdoor athletes and with Hydrate and Recover. So almost 21, 22 years ago now, we started Wilderness Athlete. And actually, it wasn't either of us. We weren't the ones doing it. We were probably far too young at that point. But Mark Paulson, a team of great people then started it. And Hydrate and Recover was the flagship product that really broke into the market. Truly innovative, truly unique, and truly was a one-of-a-kind product at the time and still is in many, many ways today.
Well, and the problem was there wasn't really anything like it at the time, right? I mean, since the 60s, when Gatorade came out, the hydration industry really hadn't changed, right? So there was a problem that needed to be solved for specifically outdoor athletes, hunters, who are out there 4 to 7 days at a time, 2-hour, 3-hour hikes, a couple of times a day.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, so hydration science has come a long ways, but everyone knows Gatorade, everyone knows Powerade. Those are the household names. There's a huge catalog of formulas and products that were always intended for the traditional athlete, the football, basketball, baseball player, guys that play between the lines, where there's breaks, there's timeouts, there's quarters, there's halftime in these sports. Now don't get me wrong, like in traditional sports, you're obviously operating at a very high level. Mental, physical, all these things are super important. But you can get away with simply replacing electrolytes in those moments. Or back then we only had a certain number of tools available to us, or to the nutrition community in general, for what we thought a electrolyte drink ought to be. It was a bunch of sodium, way too much sugar, maybe a touch of potassium, and that really was it. We didn't really get too much deeper than that. And that, I think that is really what made Hydrate and Recover so unique at the time, and still does, was that it's a really comprehensive formula, really addressing not just replacing your need to replace electrolytes, but your opportunity at that time to give yourself really valuable minerals, amino acids, adaptogenic herbs. And I think one of the biggest differences when it comes to just the basic electrolyte needs is the ratio of electrolytes that we're using. Sodium, potassium, those are very critical electrolytes. It's not the full picture. It's not the whole story. There's a ratio there that is really critical to mimic the ratio and the amount of those electrolytes that are present and healthy and optimal for your blood. Sodium, we use 100 milligrams. Potassium, we use 125 milligrams. We're also using magnesium. That level of potassium and even the presence of magnesium is, it used to be, like years ago, you would never see it. Now, even today, in a lot of drinks, they're rarely seen at any meaningful level for a number of reasons. They tend to be a little bit more costly on a raw material standpoint. They also are not very flavorful. They don't taste great. So they cause more hurdles when it comes to making a product taste good. Now, that be it as it may, they're still very, very critical for how your body operates, how your brain operates. And I think that's pretty critical to understand too, is what electrolytes are. So electrolytes are literally the electric connection between your muscles, your brain, a lot of the sending signals and connecting cells between cells in your body. It's a very fundamental, foundational part of how your body operates and functions, and your brain. It's one thing we've put a lot of energy and emphasis into with Hydrate and Recover, is studying and looking at how our product and how electrolytes in general, how a dehydrated person and how a hydrated person functions cognitively, not just physically. That is really where I think a lot of difference is made with how your perception is, how you feel, how you operate, the decisions you make, the reaction times you have, so on and so forth. So
Yeah, there's a study that our working athlete department references a lot, where they did a study on people who were hydrated at work versus who weren't hydrated at work with electrolytes, the proper balance of electrolytes. And the study showed 142% increase in production. Now, that is like just crazy to me. And think about when you're hunting, right? I mean, you have to not only be physically, on it, but you have to be mentally on it. And I think that's one thing we talk a lot about active transport, right? The electrolytes are what gets those fluids into your body and your bloodstream faster. And that not only helps your body, but like your muscles and everything like that, but it also helps your mind. And there's a couple of other great things in here, like the recover part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The BCAAs, the glutamine,
mm-hmm.
that's specifically tailored towards people who are going to be active and are going to push themselves out in the wilderness. I want to talk a little bit about the stakes really quickly if we don't take something like this out into the backcountry.
Yeah.
What happens if, you have an elk tag that you've been waiting to draw, or a sheep tag you've been going to Alaska, and you don't want to go to Alaska and just die, right? So,
yeah, there's a lot of stakes, obviously, and I mean the ones you just listed are like, probably the pinnacle of the examples of, you've got a lot of things in the line, a lot of things to lose, but it doesn't even take that much. So dehydration happens fast. It doesn't even take really all that much fluid loss to start to see a pretty rapid decline in your cognitive state, your physical performance, and your capacity for performance. And I think I think most people generally understand that, like most people are pretty familiar with the idea that like, man, if I haven't drank much water, or if I'm not fueled properly, I'm just not going to get the right type of performance, out of my body the way I would like. I think what happens though in many cases, it's happened to me, it's happened to a lot of people, is how quickly you go from feeling fine, okay, it's a warm day, you're losing some good sweat, you're working pretty hard, and you feel like, well, I'm keeping up with water, I'm drinking some water, and how quickly that can turn pretty quickly to like, I'm in a bad place. I'm having muscle cramps, I'm having, almost just too much fatigue, cognitively, I'm just sluggish, maybe a little bit of a headache. And I think it's pretty key to remember that, like, yeah, obviously water's king. Water's great. You need water in your system. Your body is primarily comprised of water, so it's very, very important to replenish those fluids, but to also do that with electrolytes. Salt, potassium, magnesium. Those are very critical things to be present in your blood, your muscles, and in your cells, in your entire body, to keep yourself operating the way you need to. Very few of us have the type of physical and mental demands like on our body and the stress on our body as we do when we're in the outdoors, hunting hard, at high elevation, under the sun all day. That puts a lot of stress on your body. It puts a lot of environmental stress. It puts a lot of different things that your body has to overcome, even on a cognitive level. You're constantly problem solving. You're deciding where to go, hurdling over this, hiking up this, how to pace yourself. You're problem solving and you're managing a whole lot of different factors at a higher level than you normally do on your normal Monday through Friday, life at home. So, Hydrate and Recover is very critical in maintaining that operational level. But what our goal is with Hydrate and Recover is not simply replacing your electrolytes so you stay alive. Obviously dehydration will kill people. It often does. It does very, very often. We're not simply trying to keep people, at that operational level. We're trying to maximize your performance. We're trying to get you to feel even better than you would without it. So sodium, potassium, these things are all very important when it comes to how you think, react, feel, and the endurance you have, your resistance to fatigue. We put an ingredient here called coenzyme Q10 that is very critical. That coenzyme Q10 is really helpful when it comes to producing energy within certain organs. It's a very critical enzyme in organ energy. So not only basically saying, here's your electrolytes, good luck. We're helping your body produce the type of stamina and support that would help you get through all that stuff.
Yeah, coenzyme Q10. Look it up because it is like one of those like little ingredients that we have in there that's actually really, really cool. So if you want more information on that, definitely Google it. It is a really cool little sneaky ingredient that we throw in there. I come from a traditional sports background. I admittingly don't hunt very often. I've went hunting with you once. I've gone. So I know a little bit about it, but I know that when I played football, and you have a little bit of both. You have a little bit of traditional and hunt and a lot of hunting background, I would say. But back in high school, when I would cramp up on the football field, or I remember being in the baseball dugout just dying of sweat, and the first thing I would go to is a Gatorade, and I would be like, I was young, and this was the move, right? But even athletes today, they have Gatorades, sponsored on their press table where they're like moving it out of the way because it's like, it's like I don't want to tell people that this is what I do, right? But I remember the times when I was just in the middle of summer, Arizona heat, 110 in the dugout after pitching, a couple of innings and just dying, and could really have used something like this. Are there any times out in the backcountry that you can think of that you or somebody else was like, man, this would have or did kind of give me the pick-me-up that I needed?
Oh, God, yeah. I probably can't even count the number of times anymore. There's been so many instances where, especially being here in Arizona, where you're in the heat so often, and like the early part of our hunting season or some of the big long adventures we do in the summertime, you're constantly balancing fluids, electrolytes, and managing heat and heat exposure. So it's kind of an ever-present thing, and I think many people are really familiar with that. That's Hydrate Recover, like we say, it's both tongue in cheek but very true that Hydrate Recover has saved lives. We've heard so many anecdotes and stories from our customers and people and friends who are in a really bad place and really far away from their truck and trailhead or water. They've got one bottle of water, or they've only got a little bit of water. They've got some Hydrate Recover. That gave them the power, the fuel, the energy to get themselves out. And I've been in a lot of circumstances, and fortunately, I've always kept a lot of it on me, so I haven't been like, oh my God, I'm out. But there have been a lot of circumstances where, like specifically, for example, last 2-3 weeks ago, when we were on a little hunt for everyone here in the company, we went on a Coues deer hunt. Me, Ben, and Peter, the first day actually, and the afternoons were getting pretty warm. Obviously this was like early November, so it wasn't crazy, but we were still seeing 80-degree temperatures. Our first day, we hiked about like 5 or 6 miles from camp. In Arizona, there's not a whole lot of tree cover. There's not shade. We were pretty much moving the whole morning, stopping here, glassing for a little bit, getting to a different ridge, glassing a little bit of a different area. We just were constantly moving. And we got about, like 4 or 5 miles or so from camp. This was kind of a roadless area. We all kind of looked at our water reserves. We realized none of us really brought quite enough water to sustain the day. We had plenty of Hydrate and Recover and energy and focus on us, of course. So we were like fine there, but we were like, we're so far in here and we only have so much water. Even if we kill something back here, it's going to add several hours and some work to get back out. So we started rationing our water, making sure we were staying hydrated, and just operating a little bit differently. But it was an example of like how quickly it could change, because we were literally like huddled under mesquite trees in the afternoon just to try to get a little bit of shade. It's still pretty warm and there wasn't much shade. So there's everything was fine. We got back to camp totally fine. We probably all chugged a gallon of water when we got back, and we were totally fine. But being prepared is so critical. In that circumstance, had we pushed it even further, like a little too far, or we weren't quite as prepared as we were with maybe some of the water we had, it could have turned into a pretty ugly situation. Grateful it didn't. But we've got some guys in the office who, one of our former employees actually, he actually had to get helivac'd out of a pretty rugged piece of wilderness in Arizona here on a bear hunt. This is maybe like 4 years ago. And he's a guy who's surrounded by Hydrate Recover and talking about hydration and water and stuff all the time. And it was that really rapid shift. All of a sudden, he was in a really bad spot. His legs pretty much seized up. He stopped actually sweating. He was lightheaded and all that. He had to get helivac'd. They called search and rescue and got him out of there pretty quick. So
I
that happened.
did not know that.
Yeah, damn.
I'll have to talk. I was going to say I'll have to talk to you about who that was after the show. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Helivac'd out.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to move on to some questions from customers because I wanted to mention first actually that our motto here is keep up, right? We don't like to say, we're going to conquer the wilderness or conquer the mountain because that's like almost impossible. As you illustrated, things can happen and you have to be prepared for that. And I think that the pillars that we are founded on right now is prepare, perform, and recover. And I think that this product in particular covers all three. I mean, you have to prepare by being hydrated. You have to perform by having it out there while you're performing. And then, of course, like you can take it at night and recover with it with all of the recovery agents in there. Mm-hmm. So I think that just illustrates exactly what this whole keep up foundation is built on. I wanted to move on to some customer questions because I hear it at trade shows all of the time. I think the most basic question that everybody asks, what's the difference between you and all the other hydration products out there? I think we touched on it a little bit with the ingredients, but What would be your answer to somebody who asks that?
Oh gosh, I could talk about this till I was blue in the face. Well, I guess we'll start with this because it's a valid question. There's so many electrolyte products out there now. The nutrition industry and sports drinks in general, if you look at the rise and the growth in that market over the last 10, 15 years, it's insane. How many new companies are coming into this space? There's a lot of claims being made. There's a lot of jargon thrown out there. And so it's a valid question. One of the things that I think people should understand about Wilderness Athlete is truly that, okay, so we've been in business for a very long time, right? And that's one of the biggest, I think, distinguishing factors between us and how we do things and a lot of other companies that rise and fall pretty rapidly. So it's a fairly easy industry to get into. If you and I have some capital we raised and we've got a creative name for a brand, it's not all that hard for us to start a supplement company. It's a very low barrier entry field to get into. There's a lot of manufacturers out there. There's a lot of pre-designed, pre-formulated products that we can just put our label on and package and sell as a very different product from the next.
Now you're giving me ideas.
Yeah. Well, it's a very competitive market, obviously. Yeah. So oversaturated, I think, is obvious. It's very saturated. The reason why we've been able to be successful and we've done this for so long is because, frankly, it works. And so at face value, what I always try to tell people is look, we can talk ingredients. I can talk to you about the high quality ingredients, the sourcing we do of these ingredients, we don't cut corners to save cost. We don't do any of that stuff. We make sure we're putting the very, very best grade ingredients. We are very, very particular about our formulas. That is a big part of it. But if it makes it into your body and you start using it and you put it through its paces and it's not working for you, you're going to look for something else. We've had so many customers that are loyal for 10, 12, 16 plus years because it makes a valuable difference in their life. It makes a difference in their performance. It continues to allow them to do the things they want to do in the outdoors and how they want to do it. So that speaks volumes. Now, that all aside, one of the other differences, like I was saying before, with pre-designed formulas that we could just slap a label on, We formulate all of our own products. We're very, very fortunate. Our formulator, Rich Scheckenbach, is one of the most brilliant human beings I've had a chance to get to know over the course of my life. We've worked really closely together. He's the foundation of Wilderness Athlete. He has been our formulator, designing and building these products from the very beginning since 2004. He has spent a very long time and career making some very successful and very great products. He is very up to date, very apprised, and very in touch with the scientific community, what's being researched out there, what's being published, and what's valid. One of the things that we constantly face and we constantly battle in this field is fads. There's ingredients, there's trends, there's types of things that are like becoming popular, gluten-free, paleo, GLP-1s, there's you name it, give it a couple months and there's going to be some new trend that everyone's gravitating to like moths to a flame because there's all these promises about it. Some of those things are well-founded, but we are always really interested in what the science says. What is the research saying? What is actually valid and healthy and smart that is going to actually result in a healthy impact to the end user? And what's safe? Those are all the things that are going through our process, and sometimes that might mean we move a little bit slower. You may not see quite the same pace of new product introductions and development and keeping pace with things. But that's because we're really interested in making sure things are right before we tell people that this is what they ought to be using, especially in circumstances where we know our customers are using our products, miles and miles away from the resources, deep into the backcountry, in harsh environments. You can't trust too much in those circumstances. You got to really make sure what you're putting in your body and how you're feeling yourself is worth it, is smart, is trustworthy. And if you looked at the people, the history, the amount of years that we have behind the people that have developed these products, you'd understand, I think, a bit more about what is on the line for them and us and all of us and our customers. But to put our name and our label on something we don't take it lightly.
Yeah, I've emailed Rich a few times, and I get an email back for a question about an ingredient maybe that I had, and I feel like I'm reading a biology textbook when I get it back. Yeah. It's actually awesome to have somebody like that in our corner, all of our corners. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought Rich up because he's literally the man. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get a little bit spicy. All right. I think I want a spicy question next. I got a question the other day, and it's a question that we've gotten before. Why do you guys put sucralose in your product? Yeah, it's a great question. We get that question all the time, of course. Sucralose for a long time has been in the crosshairs of the internet. There's a couple ways to answer that question. In all of the research that we have analyzed and looked at and been aware of and see, there is no definitive scientific valid evidence that there is a harm brought by sucralose. There's nothing negatively impacting the human body, the performance, the immune system, any of that from sucralose. Yes, you might go on social media, you might scour the internet and find an article by a blogger, by somebody that says this is what it's doing to your body, and they may sound very authoritative, they may have all of the language down, they may be able to tell you a very long story about their experience with sucralose and how it gave them X, Y, and Z symptoms, whatever. And I'm not discrediting anyone's personal experiences with it. Everyone's different. Everyone responds to certain things differently. But we, like I said, base our formulas on the scientific process. What are peer-reviewed, journal-published studies that are really put through the rigors of the scientific community? What is that saying about how this is functioning in the body? Looking at actual physiological impacts, processes, benefits, you name it. In that regard, there's been nothing that we have found to say sucralose is harmful. We're always aware of, trying to be more aware of it. If there's something that someone is aware of, that the scientific community is constantly looking at new things in different ways. So it may change, and we're always aware of it, and we're willing to always pivot on things if that's the right move. What we do know
is that sugar and the abundance of sugar, the overconsumption of sugar, the very, very clear and very negative impacts that that has on human health. And the prevalence of that problem in our country is like well documented through the rate of obesity, inflammatory diseases, poor gut health, you name it. Sugar and the big sugar in our country and the people that support that, that has a very like clearly defined and illustrated like negative impact on human health and performance. And so when we're looking at how to develop a product like this that's going to taste good, taste is king. People have to enjoy the way it tastes or they're not going to drink it. As much as I would like to say we could tell you that this is literally going to cure every problem you could ever have and make you live 10 years longer, if it doesn't taste good, people won't drink it. If we wanted to get this product to taste just as sweet and just as good and well-rounded and all that stuff with just sugar alone, we'd have to use a lot of sugar to reach that same amount of sweetness. By using a sweetener like sucralose, we use a very, very minuscule amount, much smaller than a lot of other sports drinks and a lot of other drink and food products use. If you look like on our other ingredients list, it's like the very last ingredient on that list for a good reason. It's in very, very small amounts. However, it is so sweet though that it allows us to not need to use as much sugar. That's one of the main reasons. It's taste acceptance. As much as we like to think that performance, health, all those things are like the only thing we care about, you know as well as I do that like in most circumstances you want something that's going to taste good. There is also a cognitive like mental stimulus from drinking something that tastes good, that's refreshing, revitalizing, it's invigorating. So when we're developing flavors, especially with a formula as like robust as Hydrate Recover with 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, a bunch of different adaptogenic herbs, a lot of trace minerals, branched chain amino acids, profiles of electrolytes, like a lot of unique raw materials in there. We've got to be very good at flavoring, and fortunately, Rich in our development team is great at that. Sucralose is just a part of that process.
Yeah, I always think it's the last ingredient that we put in, right? And I always think back to my mom looking at the first ingredient. If the first ingredient on a cereal box is sugar, she wouldn't buy it.
Sure.
Because that's the most that they put in, right? And I always think of it as a dash of sucralose. I think people are, thinking Splenda packets, like dumping a couple of Splenda packets in your coffee. And that's not what this is by any means.
No.
I really like the answer that our CEO, Courtney, gave to somebody at the trade show the last year. I can't believe I didn't think of it. She asked the difference between a customer, asked the difference between us and the other companies out there. And she said, very simply, we're the sciencey company. We're the sciencey company. I think that if you're watching this show, you are also a sciencey type person. So if you want more of this, I think you should like and subscribe.
Absolutely.
Like how I threw that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, I wanted to bring it down to one more question that I actually got yesterday, believe it or not, about Hydrate Recover. And this person was saying that he drinks coffee in the morning, like most people, and then maybe a glass of whiskey at night. And when he does that, he can almost guarantee he will wake up with cramps in the middle of the night, screaming with leg cramps. And he asked, how many servings of Hydrate and Recover can I take in one day? And my answer was, it depends, right?
Yeah.
So what would your answer be to somebody like that?
Very similar. I mean, it does depend.
Yeah.
Hydrate and Recover, it's a very robust formula, very dense in nutrients. The electrolytes that are in there, the other ingredients that are in there. It is important that you're drinking enough just simple water and other fluids to keep those moving through your system so your kidneys are not just overwhelmed by a lot of dense fluid to break down. However, what we do suggest, and the way I always think about this, especially in long days of hunting, hiking, whatever, my intake of Hydrate and Recover should reflect the output of sweat that I have throughout the day. If I'm putting in a 15 to 20 mile hike type day, I've been on my feet for 8 to 10 hours. I'm in the sun. I'm constantly burning fluids. I don't have any problem at all drinking and replacing my fluids with three-ish of those Hydrate and Recover servings a day. One of the things that we always try to stress with people, with not just our product here, but just in general, is to be really aware and in touch with your body. Yeah, pay attention to how you feel. Pay attention to the way certain things that you're ingesting are resulting in the way you feel. For that gentleman, I would not expect that maybe he needs to increase the amount of this, perhaps, but maybe the timing of it. Muscle cramps are a really evasive symptom that it can be a number of things that are resulting in muscle cramps. It could be a lack of electrolytes. It could be simply an imbalance of electrolytes, like a poor ratio of certain things. Maybe too much fluid. You could be, you've had too much water and you don't have enough electrolytes in your system. There's a lot of different things, and certain things work for people. Like a lot of people swear by drinking pickle juice. We've had a lot of really great success with people who struggle and have a problem with muscle cramps. They really have a lot of luck with Hydrate and Recover. I think personally, what it is both the ratio of our electrolytes, so you're getting sodium, potassium, but also magnesium. Magnesium is really helpful in relaxing blood vessel tension. So it's an electrolyte. It has a number of different properties too. It's rarely seen in a lot of other electrolyte drinks. Magnesium is really helpful when it comes to calming, a calming effect. There's a lot of evening drinks that people have that are simply like almost all magnesium. I would suggest that gentleman try drinking it maybe in the evening before bed. A lot of times, perhaps he is the type of guy that loses a lot of electrolytes through his urine, or he's a heavy salt sweater, or his diet is maybe void of, he doesn't eat a very high salt diet. He's not all that dissimilar from me. I usually drink coffee in the morning, and fairly often I'll have a whiskey in the evening. But I don't get muscle cramps at night. So I don't think his lifestyle of those two things are simply prescribing him for muscle cramps. So he just needs to try different things. The human body is constantly changing, and everyone's a little bit different from the next person. So, like I said, he's got to pay attention. In general, people got to pay attention to be aware of, how they feel, what they're eating, what they're drinking, and how that results in the way they feel. So, very often, like my wife, Courtney, and I, a lot of times, and a lot of us, we'll have Hydrate and Recover before we go to bed. If we know that the day has just not been well supported by a great diet, or we didn't really drink many electrolytes that day, or we know we've got, a lot to do the next morning, and we're going to wake up in the morning and sweat. We want to make sure we're well hydrated through the night. People actually lose a lot of water through not just perspiration, but through sleeping with their mouth open. You lose a lot of moisture. You lose a lot of fluids in your body just simply sleeping through the night. So that would be a suggestion or a place to start, at least for him.
Yeah, well, my answer to this gentleman for how many, I wish I could have given a detailed answer like that. But on the phone as the customer service representative, I told him, obviously it depends, but that we usually recommend a serving of Hydrate and Recover and then a 12 to 16 ounce bottle of water.
Yeah, like a 1-to-1.
About a 1-to-1 ratio, right? That's typically the secret sauce. Yeah. I wanted to touch on one more thing really quick because we haven't touched on it yet. But we also get questions like this all the time about this specific ingredient. 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, which I'm not mistaken, is the same amount of vitamin C as in an emergency, which you would take when you're sick, right?
Yeah. That absolutely is it's a great part of our formula that has a number of benefits. So 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, most people are familiar with the large impact on vitamin C and the immune system function. So it's there, and like for that reason alone, if you think about most people watching this, when you're drinking a product like this, you're not sitting at your desk. You can be. There's no problem with that at all. But you're an athlete. You're pushing your body to the limits. You're stressed out. You're drained. Like when we're working out hard, when we're hiking, hunting hard, we're draining our body battery and our fluid levels and all the nourishments in our body that our system operates on. in that state, we tend to be more susceptible. Our immune system is kind of on its heels. We're against the ropes. We're a little bit more vulnerable to, viruses, things of that nature, things we're going to come in contact with. Vitamin C at that level is definitely helpful at maintaining that level of immune system function, but it's also really helpful to draw in fluids to soft tissue. One of the things that people experience a lot, not just at high altitude, but in steady states of exercise, is hypoxic cramps, hypoxic muscles, and basically all that means is that tight feeling of your muscles and joints when your joints just don't feel quite as good. And vitamin C does a really good job at drawing fluids and allowing fluids to transport themselves more easily into your soft tissue. So there's a physical benefit there as well.
One time, and I don't know if this is Rich approved, our formulator, but our Arizona peach flavor is peach tea, sort of. And use this suggestion now that it's kind of sixth season, right? Heating up a serving of Hydrate and Recover just in the microwave or something like that, and sipping on it when you got the sniffles. I don't know, man. It helps out a lot.
Oh, we do it all the time.
Yeah.
At home all the time. Heat up a little water, or in camp, like in hunting camp. Like if you're hunting like in late season, it's real cold. There's nothing better than a Hydrate and Recover, almost in any flavor. It's weird how any of these flavors take on like a different flavor when you serve them hot. They're delicious. And especially if you're cold, if you got a sore throat or something like that, it's always nice to have it that way too.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, we love to hear your guys' questions. So if you see this and you have a question about Hydrate and Recover, or really anything else about Wilderness Athlete that you'd like us to talk about or answer for you, please leave a comment down below. Join our Facebook community group.
Yeah.
It's Wilderness Athlete.
Just Wilderness Athlete Community.
Wilderness Athlete Community, right? And talk to me on the phone. Shoot me an email. I'm the customer service manager. So I will see you in the emails or listen to you on the phone. So again, this is the Keep Up Show because we believe that there is a better way to do the backcountry and there's a better way to prepare, perform, and recover. I'm your host, Ethan Springston. My friend Kevin Guillen. Keep Up Show out.